This morning, I really am so happy to be interviewing our guest, Katie Berlandi. Katie is the granddaughter of the late Dr. Vincent Peale, who was, of course, not only a pastor, but yeah, we can clap for that. Vincent Peale, of course, was not only a pastor, but an author and a champion of positive thinking. It's amazing to me that I even need to read this, because he's such an important figure in American religion and culture even. And his most famous book is, of course, The Power of Positive Thinking, which has sold more than 20 million copies. Katie and I recently met at a Guidepost event where I was speaking, and I had the chance to meet a number of people. I met she and her mother, and it was just a great event where I was able to sort of get in touch with so many people who are a part of now carrying on Dr. Peale's legacy. And so Katie and I have formed a friendship, and I said, you have to come out to California and let me interview you at our church and on the Hour of Power. So we're so glad you're here, Katie. Maybe we can give her another hand and thank her for making this trip. I might just want to say, too, for our new followers, and we have a lot of them, how huge an impact your grandfather had on my grandfather's life. Which also makes this, in a way, interesting. Dr. Peale's granddaughter, Dr. Schulers' grandson. I feel like the big tipping point and breakthrough for our church was when your grandpa came and spoke at our drive-in movie church years ago. This guy, not a lot of people had heard of outside of the country and outside of the state, but everybody knew who Dr. Peale was. And your grandfather came and preached, and it was the thing that sort of caused our church to explode.
And now, I remember Grandpa, if I may, saying how clear it was within moments that your grandfather was going to do tremendous things. Yeah. And he certainly did and still does. And so Grandpa and Grandma both were very happy to be as supportive as possible to that endeavor.
And of course, your grandfather was a pastor, and what he did for my grandpa personally can't even be measured, let alone not just the mentoring, but just the book. My granddad grew up in this very strict Dutch Calvinist, like, God hates you, and you're barely, he just can't wait to put you into hell, but, if you're perfect, maybe you'll barely escape. And then here comes Vincent Peale that just talks about God's love and that we serve a positive God. And the timing for my grandfather, I think it just changed his life radically.
Right. Well, I know my grandfather was humbled by any of that influence, and they were great friends, too. And that's an important element as well.
And here's a question I know you've been asked a lot, because I've been asked a ton. What's it like growing up being Vincent Peale's granddaughter?
Well, it was pretty terrific, I might say. I would begin by saying that Grandma and Grandpa's ministry and their world travel and their relationships with world leaders and all of that was not at the forefront when we were together as a family. And my siblings and I grew up in a town where my grandparents had a country home. So whenever they weren't traveling, they were near to us, and that allowed us a lot of very natural, authentic time together. As we all think back on our time growing up with grandparents, over time, that aperture of that lens opens up as we learn more about them. And it has been a remarkable experience for me over my lifetime to learn about the impact and the influence both Grandma and Grandpa have had on lives. And I say that with a lot of humility, because I know that they felt that too. Any way they could be helpful, one person at a time, was a gift from God to them as well.
And what kind of impact do you see? What do you think is the biggest impact that your grandparents have had?
That's a powerful question, and my grandfather was a remarkable speaker, and he spoke without notes, and he was quick-witted and was filled with humility and emotion. And so I'm asking him to channel through me right now as these questions are asked with no notes. But I would say that their greatest influence would be letting people know that they are loved, and they are loved by God, and they must love themselves. And through that, a full life can be had.
And what's amazing too, and I think what you said is exactly true. What's amazing is that before your grandfather started saying that, not very many people were saying that in the church in the 40s, 50s, and even 60s. He's really the one that brought, I think, in many ways, the church back to which is such a fundamental thing in the Bible, which is God's love for people, for sinners. And not in a way that like God barely loves you, but God kind of loves you as you are. I mean, I think that there are so many pastors today that if you trace their doctrinal heritage, it goes back to your grandfather.
Yeah. And I without a doubt, and I think Grandpa would never consider himself an academic, though I think he was more so than he ever deemed himself to be. But also, I think just the whole idea of inspirational thinking or positive thinking being a spiritual act, just in the way in your book, Bobby, you speak about gratitude being a spiritual act. And I think that, again, is a gift from God as well.
Great. And how'd you get involved with Guideposts? Of course, that's his sort of big legacy now that carries on. It's still an active ministry, which you're involved with.
Absolutely. And I'm a clinical social worker by training. And so I, without a doubt, was influenced that direction by the work of Grandma and Grandpa and the care for people. And I've always wanted to somehow be able to circle back to have some involvement or perhaps some impact on Grandma and Grandpa's ministry. So I've been working with Guideposts, Guidepost Magazine, and also Guideposts Foundation, which is a wonderful foundation that's supported by Guidepost friends and supporters, donors, and we have 3 outreach divisions. One is in pediatrics, and one is with the military, where we provide military with inspirational material all over the world and for their families as well. And then OurPrayer, which is a 24/7 prayer opportunity. So I help with that, and I write a blog on their website. And so I'm really honored, and it has opened my eyes even more to the impact of their legacy.
Obviously, Dr. Peale's message is so important to you. I mean, you have a dream for the future of his message. What do you hope to see happen with his legacy?
Well, I mean, I feel, as so many people perhaps do, that his message, and Grandma's message too, because they were a team, there was no doubt about that, is a timeless one, one of inspiration and positive thinking. And so there's no time like now to be innovative in the way Grandma and Grandpa were innovative with starting Guideposts and what they did with Marble Collegiate Church and with the Institutes of Religion and Health and all these things. They were innovative, visionary people, and I think now is a time to use all of Grandpa's works, his writings, his speeches, his sermons, and our world of technology to get his message out there to more and more people to enhance lives. So I see this as a pivotal time to use. Our world has gotten smaller with technology, which means we can get the word out even more. And there is already an app on both the Droid and the iPhone, the MVP app, where you can listen to Grandpa's sermons.
Oh, cool. That's great.
So please do.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. That's great. Well, we feel connected to you and value you, and we're so glad that you've come today. Thank you for sharing your grandfather's legacy.
Thank you. And I have one little thing for Bobby here, in that when my grandfather spoke at the Crystal Cathedral in 1990, it was the last time he spoke there, Dr. Schulers sent him a beautiful picture of the two of them.
Oh, great.
With their hands clasped and our arms raised. And the inscription from Dr. Schuler on the back said, "To Norman, together we make a great team. Love, Robert Schuller, Garden Grove, California, Sunday, November 25th, 1991. So I give this to you and would love to be part of your team in any way, Bobby.
Katie. That's really a sweet gift. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So handsome.
I love that. Thank you again, Katie. Let's give her another hand. We love you and appreciate you so much. Thank you.